Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Vladimir Putin has ordered his troops not to storm the Azovstal steel plant where the last group of Ukrainian fighters in Mariupol is holding out. The Russian president told them, in his words, to seal it up so even a fly cannot escape. He also said Russia now has control of the strategic port city. But an intelligence update by a top US defense think tank says Russia has only made minor gains there in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, Moscow said they were still waiting for Ukraine's response to Russia's latest written proposal in peace talks between the two sides. The Spanish and Danish prime ministers have visited the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv in a show of support for the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Pedro Sanchez and Mette Frederiksen arrived earlier and were met by the Ukrainian president in central Kyiv. The parties then discussed further support for the Ukrainians and the prosecution of war crimes and human rights violations. Dozens of people have been killed or injured in 4 explosions across Afghanistan. The first explosion tore through a Shia mosque in the city of Mazar-Sharif. A health official said at least 11 people were killed and more than 30 injured. The Islamic State group admitted the attack, saying it had remotely detonated a booby-trapped bag when the building was packed with worshippers. The group called the attack part of an ongoing global campaign to avenge the deaths of its former leader and spokesman. The president of the World Bank has said the world faces a human catastrophe from a food crisis arising from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He said that there could be a huge 37% jump in food prices. This would hit the poor hardest, who will eat less and have less money for anything else such as schooling. Mr. Malpass, who leads the institution charged with global alleviation of poverty, said the impact on the poor made it an unfair kind of crisis that was true also of COVID.
One of the key transmission mechanisms is the shortages of food, of energy, and of fertilizer. The fertilizer and energy are critical for the crop cycle, so they're building on each other and creating a food insecurity crisis that will last at least months and probably into next year. Food prices are up already 37% year over year. There's been a shift in relative prices with food up more than CPI. That's significant because it measures how much it hits the poor.
The Chinese embassy in South Africa has donated R1 million, the equivalent of $66,000, toward the flood relief effort, an amount some have labelled as a joke. Chinese Ambassador Chen Xiaodong said the donation was part of its efforts to support South African people affected by the disaster in KwaZulu-Natal province. But many on social media have pointed out how small the amount is. More than 450 people have died in the devastating floods. Infrastructure has been destroyed in several parts of the province, and the government has declared a nationwide state of disaster. The San Francisco Bay will soon have a new fossil fuel-free ferry floating in its waters, propelled completely by hydrogen fuel cells. The aptly named Sea Change is a 70-foot, 75-passenger ferry that will service multiple stops along San Francisco's waterfront. The Sea Change marks another industry exploring fuel cells, as the auto and commercial trucking sector, as well as rail and pleasure boating, are also developing such vehicles. Advocates say that hydrogen fuel cells are cleaner than other carbon-cutting methods, as they only emit water and heat.
This is going to be the next standard, is fuel cell-driven vessels. They're clean, they're efficient, and they make sense economically on scale.
And finally, Britain's Coldstream Guards have performed Happy Birthday to mark the 96th birthday of Queen Elizabeth. The ceremony took place during the changing of the guard at Windsor Castle. The monarch's birthday was also marked by a gun salute in London's Hyde Park. And 2 photos were released showing the Queen dressed in a long, dark green coat standing between 2 white ponies. She will spend her birthday in Sandringham in Norfolk. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.